Hi guys, Jobin here. What you're looking at is the Benchmade Mini Griptilian and the Spyderco Delica 4. These are both popular knives with a lot of fans. And if you were to go to blade forums, for example, and ask for something in their class, which is roughly small EDC knife under $100, quite possibly the first recommendation you get would be for the Delica. Probably followed up by somebody saying mini grip, and then a bunch of people going along with those recommendations. Now, there is, though, a knife which I think should probably be the standard recommendation instead of these. And my point in bringing these out is not to say that they're bad knives, although I do have a few complaints about them. Probably particularly the Delica, in my opinion. I sort of fall into the Griptilian camp between the two. But I digress. I think there's a knife for about the same price, roughly $50, $60, about the same size, about the same weight, that is, well, just better. And that's the Kershaw Ram. Now, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. People's opinions will vary. But the reasons I think the Ram is better are based on specific things I can point to. For example, the edge retention is as good or better than the other knives. I've actually in particular been pretty unimpressed with Spyderco's VG10. But again, that's probably something for the Delica's review. It is only a little bit heavier at about 3.5 ounces versus, I think, 2.5 and 2. The construction is more rigid and I would assume stronger. Both of these knives with their largely plastic handles can, you can feel the handles flex even under fairly modest work. And the handle is more comfortable. That's something that could easily be very subjective, but I find it, in my case, quite strongly that with prolonged use, my hand doesn't cramp up or get hot spots basically at all with this knife, whereas with both of these, there are issues with prolonged use. Again, my point isn't to bash either of these two knives in particular. I'm saying most people would say these are good knives. This is a great knife that's very similar in a lot of ways, and I think it should be said in the same breath with those, if not said, and probably said first. So let's move on to talking about this knife in general. Well, actually, I don't mean in general, I mean in specifics. Let's look at the features and see what we're dealing with here, so that hopefully, now that I've said my opinion, you can understand why I think that way, and maybe you'll agree. Let's talk about the lock first, actually, which, I think I forgot to say this, but as good or better than the other knives. This knife has amazing lockup. It is, you know, this is something people, like, say a lot with varying degrees of truth. Sometimes they're exaggerating. I can't tell this from a small fixed blade when it's open and locked. There's no play at all. Doesn't wiggle side to side, doesn't wiggle up and down, doesn't move. Now, it has its own locking system, which I don't think is used on any other knives right now, and I think that's what the knife is named for. I think it's called the Ram lock, which is an acronym which I can't remember what it stands for. But it's controlled from this little switch here, which is only on one side of the knife. And inside, it's probably sort of a cousin of the Axis lock, I guess you could say, where there's a piece that you can actually sort of see the action as the switch slides back and slides back, then slips into a notch or something and engages. sort of a cousin of the Axis lock, the way something slips in and blocks the blade. Now, it's actuated from only one side, but this actually doesn't really pose a problem for lefties, in my opinion, because I sometimes use the knife left-handed, and the lock is quite easy to disengage with your middle finger. So it's not a problem that there isn't a matching switch on this side. You just hold it like this and push back. That's it. Also, let's go on to the pocket clip, since it's sort of related to lock access. You've got the pocket clip can be mounted on either end on the right-hand side of the knife, but only for tip up on the left-hand side of the knife. That's because if you mounted it for tip down, it would interfere with the pivot screw here and access to the lock switch. So it's a 3-position pocket clip, but if you're worried about the pocket clip blocking access to the lock switch, it doesn't when it's mounted on this side, on either side. Okay. Now, as you see, this is a flipper design, and it has one of the best flippers I've ever seen in my life. It's kind of amazing. The knife is not spring assisted, but it opens with the kind of reliability and ease I've come to expect from a really good spring assist. Like, for example, here's a ZT750. That takes about the same amount of force. It actually feels pretty similar to open both knives. But this one's got a spring inside helping it along. This one doesn't. It's just expertly weighted and balanced to make one of the most fun, fast, and reliable openings I have on any knife. I mean, seriously, if you love knives, you could just play with this one for hours. It's great. Now you might notice that it's got this massive stop pin here. I like that. On a knife that opens like that, it's nice to see the thing that stops the blade is kind of overbuilt. Definite thumbs up there. Now, in addition to the flipper, it has these funny little 3 bumps right here. If the knife has a weakness, it might be those, because they are a little less convenient to use than, say, an opening hole. Or, actually, I don't have a knife with a proper thumb stud on me today. These are basically primarily blade stops. But you can do it. See? It's actually not bad at all. And it's tricky, but you could even flick it. See, really not designed for that. See, I say I can do it, but then I can't do it for like the 4th try. But if anything, that serves to drive the point home. Not the primary opening mechanism. You want to do it nice, slowly, and quietly. You can do it with them, though, with little problem. Definitely primarily intended to be a flipper knife, though. Now, blade design. Very practical blade design. It is hollow ground. Fair amount of straight edge. Just very traditional in the blade profile. It gets pretty acute at the tip. Alright. I don't really have a ton to say about that. It works. It's a good blade. Probably the most interesting thing to talk about is the handle. A lot of people are going to see this knife and this handle. I think it looks a little weird, a little gimmicky. Forget that. It's great. Seriously, this handle is amazing. You've got a number of grip options, but I want to talk first about probably the most important one. That is this grip like this. For light cutting tasks, you can hold a knife pretty much any which way you want. I mean, you can hold a knife like this and cut a piece of string, you know? But if you're cutting something tough or for a long time and you want to exert some pressure, you're going to hold your knife like this probably in 95% of cases. And in this grip, the knife excels because, well, you've got this little projection here which keeps your hand from sliding back or forward, which is good. But one of the unsung features of this knife is this little depression here and the fact that it's smooth. What this effectively does is it makes the knife super comfortable on the web of your hand here between the thumb and fingers. It's low pressure, it doesn't cut or bite into it, and you can really push for a tough cut very comfortably for quite a while. And the rest of the handle has just the right amount of slight downward slope here, a little bit slope here, to really cradle the last few fingers in the palm of your hand. It's really great. Now the grips work okay too. You do have this one, which is kind of interesting. Not really sure of a practical use that would require this, but if you need a little more length for something, you can come back like this, which is fine, or up like that. This kind of grip isn't really good for heavy cutting. Your thumb will get really tired and kind of sore if you're exerting a lot of pressure, or for some detail things you might want that. So there we go. Maybe a word on a couple other things. I mentioned briefly that the edge retention seemed to be as good or better than the Delica and the Mini Grip. It's certainly better than the Delica. I'm not really impressed with Spyderco's VG10 at all. And I have not tested like these head-to-head, so take that with a grain of salt, but I will tell you that the edge retention on this steel, which has a name which is mostly numbers, and I can't remember off the top of my head right now, is very good, and when it does get dull, it sharpens up very easily, and it takes a nice fine edge. This particular knife was sold as a blemished knife. I got it from Kershaw Guy on Blade Forums. See the little 4 X's there that indicate that Kershaw didn't consider it first quality. However, when I got the knife, I had trouble finding anything wrong with it. From cutting, there's scuffing and stuff on the blade coating now, but the only thing I could maybe find, I'm not even sure if this will show up, is a few little scratches in the coating there. Functionally, the knife is absolutely perfect. I couldn't find any finish or fit problems couldn't find any other finish problems, and no fit problems at all. All the screws look good. Everything's excellent. It's really kind of impressive to me, you know, that a knife Kershaw kicks out the door at considering it to be substandard quality is better than a lot of first quality knives from other companies. So overall, day after day, if I want to carry a relatively small, lightweight knife, this is something I find myself reaching for time and time again, because it's fun to play with, and the ergonomics are fantastic if you actually need to do some serious work with it. You know, even things that can often become uncomfortable with a folding knife, like whittling dense wood, are surprisingly pleasant to do with this. So this is overall one of my favorite folding knives, And if you're looking for a folding knife in the approximately $50 market, this is one of the first ones you should look at. It really, really is. It's very hard to do better than this one. Okay guys, this is Jobin signing off, saying, remember where your knife is.